The cold lake lay under a ghostly mist, its surface broken only by the ripple of a single fallen leaf. Officer Daniel Reyes tightened his coat against the damp air, his breath clouding in front of him, and glanced down at K-9 Max. The German shepherd's ears twitched, muscles coiled, and then, just once, he barked sharply at the water, low and tense. Daniel's heart clenched. Something wasn't right. The lake had been quiet all these years, a forgotten mirror of the town's darkest secrets. And yet, as the ripples widened, he felt the sickening certainty that what was about to surface would tell the story no one wanted to hear. The fog rolled over Coldwater Lake like a living thing, curling around the edges of the pine forest, hiding the jagged shoreline beneath a blanket of gray. Daniel Reyes parked a patrol truck at the small clearing where the dirt road ended and the lake began. He rubbed at his jaw, tiredness gnawing at him, and stared at the water. Max, his K-9 partner, sat rigid, ears pointed forward, tail barely moving. The bark had come again, a low, warning sound. One sharp bark, and then a growl, almost imperceptible, as if he glimpsed something no human should see. The town of Hartleaf Falls wasn't big. It never had been. A few hundred souls clinging to the last threads of old industries and family names, a place where everyone knew your history before you were born. And yet, no one spoke about the lake. Not really. Parents would shush their children away. Teenagers dared each other to step near its edge, and the old-timers whisper about drownings, disappearances, and the strange things floating just beneath the surface. Daniel stepped out of the truck, boots crunching on frost-hardened dirt. He tightened his gloved hands around Max's leash. "You see it too, don't you, boy?" he murmured, mostly to himself. Max barked again, low and sharp, and pawed at the ground. Daniel's stomach tightened. He'd only been in Hartleaf Falls for a year, transferred after a messy case in city, one that had cost him more than he cared to admit. The lake didn't care about rank or badges. He reminded himself. It didn't care about morality, justice, or who got hurt along the way. It simply waited. He followed Max down the narrow, rocky path leading to the water's edge. Pine needles and wet leaves made each step a careful negotiation. The air smelled of damp earth, old rot, and something sharper, metallic, something beneath the surface. "Do you feel it?" Daniel asked, although Max's stiff posture said enough. The dog's hackles rose, tail straight, head fixed forward. And then the bark came again, short, sudden, urgent. Daniel froze. Across the lake, something bobbed. At first, he thought it was driftwood, a log carried by the slow current. But the shape didn't move like wood. It twisted, just slightly, as though aware of their gaze. His heart began to hammer, a slow, dread-filled rhythm. "You stay here," he said, voice low, almost trembling. Max whined but obeyed, eyes never leaving the water. Daniel crouched, squinting at the shadow just beneath the surface. It was a body, or something like it. The outline of shoulders, the flash of something pale, then gone. Beneath the ripples. He pulled out his radio. "Unit 4 to dispatch. I need a diver team at Coldwater Lake. Possible submerged subject. Over." Static answered, then a scratchy acknowledgement. Daniel's fingers shook as he stuffed the radio back into his jacket. He'd seen death before, plenty of it, and yet the lake had a way of stripping away pretense and exposing raw fear. Something about the cold. Still water felt alive, waiting to tell him something he didn't want to know. "Max!" he whispered, scratching behind the dog's ears. "Stay." But the dog was restless. His growl deepened, reverberating through the thin winter air. Hours passed like slow-moving shadows. Daniel stayed by the edge, boots sunk slightly into muddy waterlogged earth, eyes never leaving the ripples. He tried to remember why he had taken this assignment, why he had left behind the city chaos and the mess of his own choices. And then the memory came, sudden and sharp, the argument with his ex-partner in the city, the betrayal that had ended a career, the lie that had cost someone their life. He swallowed hard. That guilt had followed him here, like a shadow in the fog. By mid-afternoon, divers finally arrived, their rubber suits slick and black against the gray water. Daniel stepped back, letting them work. He felt his phone buzz. It was a text from his brother. "Be careful. You always get too close." Daniel didn't respond. He was already too close. The first diver surfaced minutes later, holding a rope taut in gloved hands. His face was pale beneath the mask, eyes wide with a mixture of shock and disbelief. Daniel's stomach dropped. "What is it?" he asked, moving closer. The diver shook his head, staring at the lake. It's a car," he said finally. "An old sedan, partially submerged, but..." He trailed off, expression tight. Daniel could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down. The other diver dove again. Moments later, he surfaced with something smaller, a waterlogged box, old and corroded. Daniel knelt beside it, brushing away the grime with a gloved hand. Inside, he found old photographs, a rusted watch, a necklace snapped in two, and beneath that, a journal, soaked and unreadable. "Jesus," Daniel muttered, swallowing hard. This isn't just an accident." Max barked again, insistently, his head turned toward the opposite shore. Daniel followed the dog's gaze. There, hiding among the reeds, was a figure, thin, hunched, eyes darting. A local, he realized, someone trying too hard to stay invisible. Daniel's pulse spiked. "Hey!" he called, voice firm. The figure froze, then bolted into the trees. Daniel cursed and started after them, Max bounding ahead, ears flattened in excitement. But the figure disappeared into the tangle of branches and fog. Daniel returned to the car, heart still pounding. He could feel the eyes of the town on him, even though no one was there. Something old, ugly, buried, was stirring beneath the placid surface. And for the first time, he realized that Max hadn't just barked at the water. The dog had sensed a story waiting to rise, the story that would unravel everything Hartley Falls had hidden for decades. By nightfall, Daniel sat in the truck, headlights cutting through the mist. Max curled at his feet. The divers had recovered what they could, but the lake kept its deepest secrets. The photographs hinted at families long gone. The journal promised revelations, and the car, silent and sullen, hinted at betrayal, violence, and truths nobody wanted to face. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He had come here for quiet, for a fresh start. Instead, he had walked into a story of loss, lies, and human darkness. Max whined softly, nudging him with a wet nose, and Daniel realized the dog's warning had been clear from the start. The lake didn't just hold bodies. It held memory, and memories he knew too well could be more dangerous than anything living. He pulled out his phone again, scrolling through old messages, trying to piece together who might be involved. His mind churned with possibilities, neighbors, old friends, families bound by shame and secrets. Whoever had submerged that car, whoever had buried that journal, they were watching, waiting, and Daniel understood, in the deep hollow of his chest, that someone would do anything to keep the lake's truth hidden. He looked down at Max. The dog's gaze was unwavering, almost human in its intensity. Daniel swallowed the lump in his throat. He wasn't sure whether to be terrified or grateful. Max had seen it first. And maybe, just maybe, that was the only thing keeping him alive. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying the faintest hint of decay, rust, and something he couldn't name. Daniel shivered, pulled his coat tighter, and made a decision. Tomorrow, he would start following the threads. He would uncover the full story. But as the truck idled in the mist, a shadow detached itself from the forest, watching him. Silent, patient, waiting for the wrong move. And Daniel Reyes, no stranger to danger, felt the weight of the town sin settle over him like a shroud. The morning sun barely pierced the mist over Hartley Falls, leaving the town draped in pale gray. Daniel Reyes stood at the edge of his small kitchen, sipping bitter coffee and staring at the stack of recovered items from Coldwater Lake. The journal, water-stained and brittle, was on the table before him, along with photographs that smelled faintly of mildew. Max lay near his feet, ears twitching, occasionally letting out a soft growl when a breeze rattled the window. Daniel hadn't slept properly. He had tried, lying on the narrow cot in the small apartment above the station, but visions of the submerged car and the shadow in the trees refused to leave him. Something about the lake unsettled him, gnawed at the edges of his mind in a way nothing else had. It wasn't just the sight of death. It was a knowing. Someone in Hartley Falls had allowed it. Or worse, someone had orchestrated it. The first photograph was of a girl, maybe 12 or 13, standing by the lakeside with a small fishing rod. Her smile was pale but genuine, eyes bright, unknowing. Another photo showed a man with a firm jawline and a neatly trimmed beard, his arm around a woman whose laughter reached her eyes, even in the faded print. Then there were letters, folded neatly, a mix of handwritten words and typewritten sentences, some barely legible. Daniel turned them over, searching for a clue. Max nudged the journal with his nose, eyes locked on Daniel. "All right, boy," he said, placing the mug down. "Let's see what secrets you've been keeping." The first page was soaked through, ink bleeding, but he managed to decipher a date, August 1998. The entries were disjointed, but a pattern emerged, mentions of arguments, strange encounters near the lake, rumors about someone named Carrick. A chill ran down Daniel's spine as he realized these weren't just personal musings. They were records of something darker. Someone had been keeping tabs on families, on the people who came and went near the lake. Daniel's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. He opened it to find Sheriff Leonard Hayes, tall, broad-shouldered, his face lined with age and worry. "Morning, Daniel," Leonard said, stepping inside. His eyes flicked to the journal and photographs on the table. "I see you've been busy." "Trying to make sense of what the lake gave up," Daniel said, gesturing to the items. Leonard's gaze darkened. "You're digging into things better left alone, you know that?" Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Is that a warning or a plea?" Leonard sighed. "Call it experience. That lake, it's taken people before. And it'll take more if you push too hard." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I didn't come here for warnings, Sheriff. I came here for answers." The sheriff paused, then dropped his voice. "You'll find what you're looking for, but at a cost." Before Daniel could respond, Max growled sharply at the window. Outside, a car was parked at the edge of the street, engine off. A man sat behind the wheel, watching. Daniel squinted. He didn't recognize him. The man's expression was unreadable, but his presence was deliberate. A warning, a shadow from the past, or perhaps the future. Daniel returned to the journal, flipping to another page, where a name repeated over and over: Evelyn Carrick. She was in the photographs, but references suggested she had been at the lake the day something or someone disappeared. And the way her name was scribbled, over and over, felt frantic, almost fearful. He needed to know who she was, what happened, and why her name was tied to the lake's secrets. By mid-morning, Daniel drove toward the outskirts of Hartley Falls, the road narrow and flanked by towering pines. Max sat in the passenger seat, alert, ears moving at every rustle. The house he sought was small and weathered, barely visible behind a screen of birch trees. Mail piled against the door, an unopened envelope fluttering with the breeze. "Looks abandoned," Daniel muttered. He stepped out, boots crunching over frost-hardened leaves, and called her name softly. "Evelyn?" "Mrs. Carrick." No answer, only the whisper of wind through the trees. He circled the house, eyes scanning. A door to the side, slightly ajar, revealed a dim hallway inside. Daniel's heartbeat picked up, senses sharpened by years of experience. He stepped inside, Max close behind, muscles tense. The air smelled of mildew and something faintly metallic. A photo on a small table caught his attention, the same girl from the lake photographs. Her eyes seemed to follow him. Then, from upstairs, a creak. Someone was there. Daniel moved silently, calling out again, voice steady but firm. "Evelyn Carrick, I'm Officer Reyes. I mean no harm." A shadow moved at the top of the stairs. A woman emerged, late 40s, her hair tied back, eyes sharp but wary. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Her voice carried both fear and authority, a fragile balance. "I need to ask you about the lake," Daniel said gently. "About the car, the box, the photographs." Her eyes flicked to Max, then back to Daniel. "You don't know what you're meddling with," she said, trembling. "That lake, it's cursed. People, they vanish. And those who know, they're haunted for life." Daniel nodded slowly. "I'm aware. I've seen some of it already." Evelyn swallowed hard. "You have no idea how deep it goes. How much betrayal. How much evil." Her hands shook, clutching the railing. "My family, my friends, some of them didn't survive. Some of them didn't even get a chance. Daniel could feel her pain, raw and real. "Then help me," he said. "I need to know what happened. Who was responsible?" Evelyn hesitated. Then, with a sigh, she gestured for him to follow. "If you want the truth, it won't be easy. And you might not like it." Inside, she led him to a room at the back of the house. Walls lined with maps, old photographs pinned haphazardly, letters and newspaper clippings strewn across a desk. Evelyn began pointing out names, dates, relationships, a web of deceit, family feuds, and town politics that spanned decades. "You see this?" she said, pointing to a photograph of a man with a familiar jawline. Harold Graves. He was supposed to watch over the lake, but he decided someone had to pay. Her voice broke. "That car, the girl, she didn't stand a chance." Daniel felt bile rise in his throat. "You mean this was deliberate?" Evelyn nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. "And worse, people we trusted, friends, family, they betrayed us. They buried the truth, lied to everyone. And the town watched and whispered, and nothing changed." Max growled low and insistent, ears pinned. Daniel followed his gaze to the window. Across the street, the man in the parked car was gone. The air seemed heavier, as though the house itself was holding its breath. Daniel realized with a sinking feeling that Evelyn wasn't the only morally gray figure here. He had been drawn into a network of lies, betrayals, and hidden alliances that made his own moral compass feel insufficient. And the thought hit him hard. Someone was watching, maybe waiting to see if he would crumble. Evelyn handed him a folder. Inside were letters, some dated years ago, others more recent. Names circled in red ink, threats implied, payments demanded. Harold wasn't working alone, she said. There are others still here, still hiding. They're the ones who want the lake's truth buried forever. Daniel closed the folder, heart pounding. "Then we need to start untangling it. Whoever did this, they'll try to stop us." Evelyn's eyes hardened. "And if they succeed? If they find you first?" Daniel shrugged, a shadow of a grim smile on his lips. "Then Max and I will deal with it. But I don't walk away from the truth." For the first time, he felt the weight of betrayal not as an abstract concept, but as a living, breathing threat. Every clue from the lake, every photograph, every letter pointed to a conspiracy that had festered for decades. And now, Daniel was at the center of it. By nightfall, he returned to his apartment, exhausted but alert. He spread the folder, journal, and photographs across the table. Max lay next to him, head resting on Daniel's boot, eyes half closed but attentive. Daniel rubbed his temples, the tension knotting deep in his skull. Someone in Hartley Falls had betrayed more than friendship or trust. They had betrayed life itself. And the lake, cold and patient, had finally begun to speak. He didn't know what he would find next, but one thing was certain. Once a secret surfaced in Hartley Falls, it refused to sink back into silence. And for Daniel Reyes, the ripples of betrayal were only beginning. The morning fog had returned to Hartley Falls, thick as wool, muffling the town in gray silence. Daniel Reyes drove slowly toward Coldwater Lake, Max sitting alert in the passenger seat, ears twitching at every sound. He carried the folder Evelyn had given him, photographs and letters marking the path of decades-long betrayal. Every turn of the road reminded him of how deeply deception ran here. Families, friends, neighbors, all tangled in lies designed to keep the lake's secrets submerged. As he reached the edge of the lake, Daniel noticed movement near the shoreline. A solitary figure crouched by the water, fingers skimming the surface. He instinctively reached for his sidearm, though he wasn't sure if it was needed. Max growled, low and menacing. "Stop," Daniel called, voice firm. "Identify yourself." The figure slowly rose. It was Harold Graves, the man whose name had haunted the pages of Evelyn's folder. His face was lined, weathered, but there was a gleam in his eye, sharp and cunning. "You!" Daniel muttered. "You've been watching all this time." Harold's lips twisted into a sardonic smile. "Watching? No. Guiding. Someone had to make sure the lake kept its purpose. People forget, officer, that water has memory." Daniel's stomach churned. "Purpose? What did you do?" Harold stepped closer, boots crunching against frozen earth. Everything. Everyone who didn't belong, who might have exposed the truth. I removed them. The car, the girl, it was supposed to stay buried. I protected Hartley Falls in my own way. Daniel's heart sank. The lake's secrets weren't accidents. They were deliberate. And the person behind it was not some shadowy stranger, but a man the town had trusted for decades. You monster, Daniel whispered. How many lives did you ruin? Harold shrugged. Enough to keep the town alive. You think the world is black and white, officer, but it isn't. Sometimes the only way to protect people is to hide the truth. People like Evelyn, they would have torn everything apart. Daniel clenched his fists. Max, he murmured. The dog barked once, low and warning, ears pinned. Harold flinched but did not retreat. From the edge of the reeds, another figure emerged, Evelyn. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with resolve. You can't keep hiding, Harold, she said. The lake has spoken. The truth will surface whether you like it or not. Harold laughed softly. And what will that accomplish? People will judge, gossip, and life will move on. Secrets die, Evelyn. Some of us just decide when. Daniel stepped forward. No, people die because of secrets like yours. He felt a surge of anger, years of frustration from his past, and the betrayal in Hartley Falls mixing into one. We're not letting it continue. The tension hung in the air like frost. Max growled again, more insistently. Harold's hand twitched near his jacket. Daniel's pulse quickened. He realized Harold had brought a gun. Years of deceit had made him cautious, dangerous. Before anyone could act, a sound broke the stillness. A splash. From the misty edge of the lake, a wooden box floated to the surface, partially open. Papers and photographs spilled out, drifting across the water like confetti. Daniel leaned forward, heart pounding. Among them was the last piece of evidence, a waterlogged envelope with Evelyn's family seal. Evelyn stepped forward, trembling, and snatched it from the water. Inside were letters written by her father, letters that exposed Harold's manipulations, the exact chain of betrayals, and the deaths he had caused. The proof was undeniable. The lake had given up its final secret. Harold's face hardened. You can't, this changes nothing. Daniel met his gaze. Steady. It changes everything. People will know. You'll answer for every life you destroyed. Harold's shoulders slumped slightly, the first crack in his armor. You don't understand. I tried to do what was right. The town, it needed protection. Evelyn's voice was cold now. Protection? You call murder protection? Tears streaked her face, but her hands were steady. You betrayed everyone who trusted you, including me. And the lake remembers everything. Max barked sharply, breaking the tension. Harold flinched, then turned abruptly, disappearing into the woods, leaving behind only the lingering echo of his arrogance. Daniel exhaled, feeling the weight of the confrontation lift slightly. The lake was quiet again, but it felt different now. Honest, cleansed of lies. Evelyn sank to her knees at the water's edge, clutching the letters to her chest. I don't know what to do now, she whispered, voice trembling. Daniel knelt beside her. Start by breathing. We've uncovered the truth. That's the first step. Max padded closer, laying his head on Daniel's knee, as if sharing the burden of their ordeal. The mist began to lift slightly, revealing the calm surface of Coldwater Lake, which now held no more secrets. The ripples reflected the first weak rays of sunlight, a fragile promise of clarity. Over the next few days, Daniel and Evelyn worked together, presenting the evidence to the authorities and the community. It wasn't easy. Some locals resisted, unwilling to accept the betrayals of neighbors, friends, and family. But eventually, the story could no longer be ignored. Harold Graves was taken into custody, his web of manipulations finally exposed. The lake remained a symbol, its cold, still waters reminding everyone what had been lost and what had survived. Daniel often returned there with Max, not to investigate, but to reflect. He felt the weight of the town's collective memory and the fragile redemption that truth had granted. One evening, Daniel stood at the edge of Coldwater Lake alone. Max sat beside him, ears alert but relaxed. The water mirrored the fading light, calm and silent. He thought of the girl in the photographs, Evelyn's family, and the many lives that had been altered by secrets and betrayals. Sometimes he realized survival wasn't about winning or losing. It was about understanding the cost of truth, the price of silence, and the courage to face both. The lake had taught him that. Evelyn approached quietly, carrying a small bundle of the remaining recovered items. She handed Daniel a photograph of Max as a puppy, taken years ago by her father. "For when the memories get heavy," she said softly, "to remind you why you fight." Daniel smiled faintly, placing the photo in his jacket pocket. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting me." She nodded, eyes glistening. "You deserve to know. And maybe you're the only one who could have seen it through." The two stood side by side, watching the lake. The wind whispered across the surface, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth, mingled with the faintest traces of water and old memories. Max barked once, low and content, and then settled back on his paws. No one spoke for a long while. Words weren't necessary. The lake had spoken, the truth had surfaced, and the town had begun to reckon with itself. Daniel felt a strange calm, bittersweet but grounding. He had entered Hartley Falls seeking answers, confronting danger, betrayal, and darkness. He had faced the worst of human motives and survived, and those scars remained, emotional, moral, and otherwise. He finally understood what it meant to see a story through to its end. The lake shimmered under the pale sunset, holding both sorrow and hope. Daniel reached down, resting a hand on Max's head, feeling the steady warmth of his companion. Together, they turned toward the town, toward the fragile promise of healing, carrying with them the knowledge that the past could no longer be buried, and that truth, no matter how cold, could bring redemption. Coldwater Lake lay behind them, silent now, but its story would linger forever, in memory and justice, and in the quiet courage of those who refused to let secrets sink without a trace.